like normally on Wednesday, when I'm usually here, and we give a certain verse, so I asked which verse, and I was told that there's no specific verse for Sunday. You just talk about whatever you like. So I was thinking, I'd rather actually have a specific verse. It's a lot easier than trying to figure out what I'm going to talk about. But I thought about God being a person. So I picked a verse that talks about God being a person from the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Attaining the Supreme, text 9. Kavim Puranam Anushasitaram Anur Aniyas Yamsam Anusmared Yaha Savasya Dataram Achintya Rupam Aditya Varnam Tamasa Paristat. So you can repeat the word for word. Kavim, the one who knows everything. Puranam, the oldest. Anushasitaram, the controller. Ano, then the atom. Aniyamsam, smaller. Anusmaret, always thinks of. Yaha, one who. Savasya, of everything. Dataram, the maintainer. Achintya, inconceivable. Rupam, whose form. Aditya Varnam, luminous like the sun. Tamasaha, to darkness. Parastat, transcendental. Translation. One should meditate upon the Supreme Person as the one who knows everything, as he who is the oldest, who is the controller, who is smaller than the smallest, who is the maintainer of everything, who is beyond all material conception, who is inconceivable and who is always a person. He is luminous like the sun, and he is transcendental, beyond this material nature. So this verse is describing something about God. People talk about God, who is God, what is God, and people have different conceptions of God. So this verse gives a very nice understanding of God. Before I read the purport, which is Srila Prabhupada's explanation of the verse, I'll just give a short explanation by reading the verse again. One should meditate upon the Supreme Person. First of all, we should meditate. Meditate means thinking of, fixing the mind on, concentrating on. The Supreme Person is the way you should meditate on that Supreme Person as one who knows everything. So we all know he's all knowledge, he knows everything. As he who is the oldest, so he's the oldest, although he doesn't appear like an old man. He was 125 years old when he spoke the Bhagavad Gita, and he looked like a fresh youth, around maybe 16 years old. So he doesn't age like we age. He is a transcendental body. Who is the controller? So he is the supreme controller. He controls everything. Who is smaller than the smallest, and mentioned in here the atom, in the word for word, ano, which is the atom. He's smaller than the atoms. He's also larger than the atom. He's the smallest of the small and the largest. Who is the maintainer of everything. Everything is being maintained by him. This is how you should be meditating upon God. Who is beyond all material conception. So that's another problem. We have material conceptions, but he's beyond these material conceptions. So we can conceive of him materially, but we also have to know he's beyond these material conceptions. And the next part is achintya, which means who is inconceivable. We can't really conceive him. But if he wants, he can reveal himself to us. And he reveals himself to us through these scriptures. And who is always a person. So there are people who have this impersonal aspect of God as a force or an energy, but he's actually a person. there is an impersonal aspect also, which Brahmeti Paramatmiti Bhagavaniti Shabhyate, that the absolute truth is known in three phases: Brahman, Paramatam, Bhagavan. And Bhagavan is the person, the supreme person. And this is the most complete understanding of the absolute truth. But there's Brahman, which is the all-pervasive aspect that God is everywhere. Everything is made of the same substance, Brahman. That's also God. And Paramatma is God is in your heart. He's actually seated in your heart. And he's directing us, and he's witnessing all of our activities. So these are three understandings or realizations of the same absolute truth. But the most complete understanding is he's a person. And as it says here, he's always a person. He doesn't give up his personality to become Brahman or give it up to become Paramatma. He is luminous like the sun. He is a great effulgence. Sometimes people seem to be effulgent. When you see pictures of Jesus and his effulgence. Some people actually have an effulgence, and God has the greatest effulgence. And he is transcendental, beyond this material nature. Now Srila Prabhupada's purport. The process of thinking of the Supreme is mentioned in this verse. So this is the process. These are ways that we can think of the Supreme. We talk about Krishna consciousness. This is the Krishna consciousness movement. It means to be thinking of Krishna, to think of God. So these are all different ways to help us to think of him. Otherwise, we're thinking of matter. We're thinking of mundane topics. The mind is going to be filled with something. It's not going to be void. There's no such thing as void. You can try. I tried. I tried many, many years ago in Zen Buddhist to make my mind void, and it never can happen. Doesn't matter how hard you try. It's always something that's going to come in that mind. And if it's not something transcendental or meditation on Krishna, then it's going to be something mundane or something that's going to what we would call Maya. Maya is illusion. Something that's going to put us in illusion, that I'm this body. We can get into that whole subject, how I'm the spirit soul. I'm not the body. Everyone is the soul in the body. And the body is like a dress, and we put it on at birth, we take it off at death, but we're not the body. But we can use the body in serving God, or we can use the body to try to enjoy the senses of the body. So that's Maya, illusion. So if we're not thinking of Krishna, Krishna is speaking all of these things for us to help us to meditate on him. So the process of thinking of the Supreme is mentioned in this verse. The foremost point is that he is not impersonal or void. One cannot meditate on something impersonal or void. How can you meditate on the void? It's like, that's not possible. Actually, there's nothing that's void. There's no such thing as void, actually. I mean, we have the word, and it has some meaning, and we can get close to having some kind of a void. In science, they can have a box, but there's still things inside. There's still some atoms. There's still something. So one cannot meditate on something impersonal or void. That is very difficult. The process of thinking of Krishna, however, is very easy and is factually stated herein. So you can think of how he's the oldest. He's a person. He knows everything. If he knows everything, he knows your heart. He knows what you're thinking. He knows what you're feeling. You don't even have to ask him for anything. Oh, please, God, give me something, whatever. I don't have to ask him. He knows what I want. I just have to serve him. And if he wants, he gives it to me. And if he doesn't want, he doesn't give it to me. And if he doesn't give it to me, it's because he knows if he gives it to me, I'll just be in more illusion. So we want to try to surrender to Krishna, to remember Krishna. And these are different ways. The process of thinking how Krishna is very easy. He said, I'm the light of the sun and the moon. I'm the light in all luminous objects. So we see light, we can think of Krishna. So first of all, the Lord is Purusha, a person. We think of the person, Ram, and the person, Krishna. These are historical personalities in the Ramayana, in the Mahabharata. So there are these different stories. They're not fiction. They're actual real histories, itihasas. They're actually histories of the world. And these are persons, and you know about them, and you can meditate on them, and you see how great they are. Some people think that Ram, they rather they rather think of Ram, or they're more attracted to Ram. If you read the Ramayana, he's so attractive. He's the ideal king, the ideal husband, the ideal son. He's like this perfect person in every way, and he's very attractive. So he comes and he performs these pastimes. Why? So we can become attracted to him. And when we become attracted to him, we become Krishna conscious, and if we're thinking of him, we also give up these thoughts of sense gratification, and we can leave our bodies thinking of him and go back to him. So he comes to help us to remember him, and he performs wonderful pastimes. And Krishna is also very attractive, but he is not very, very different from Ram. Ram doesn't do anything wrong. Krishna does a lot of things wrong. He steals butter. He steals. And then he doesn't want to tell his mother. He's not so honest and truthful with his mother. He does so many things. He's almost like you might say a rascal. But that's Krishna, and he's attractive in that way. And he attracts our mind. He's so cute and so wonderful. But yet he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he's the supreme enjoyer. It doesn't say that here, but he is the supreme enjoyer. No one can enjoy. Everything is meant for his enjoyment. And he uses this for his enjoyment. He doesn't even always tell the truth, Krishna. You know, he told Duryodhana that he would not fight in the battle of Kurukshetra. You know, you can pick me, or you can have my armies. And I won't fight. I'm not going to fight. And whoever I see first in the morning, that person, between him, Duryodhana and Arjuna, they can choose whether they want me or they want my armies. Duryodhana wanted his armies. Why do I have this person who doesn't even not even going to fight? Why would I want him on my side? So he wanted to see Krishna. He wanted Krishna to see him first. So he went while Krishna was sleeping and sat. Krishna's laying down here, and he just sat right next to him. So when he opens his eyes, he'll see him, and then he'll take his armies. And then Arjuna came, and Arjuna sat at Krishna's feet. And when Krishna got up, he just sat up. And he saw Arjuna, and he didn't see Duryodhana. And then Duryodhana was a little fried, thinking, I'm going to lose all these armies. But then Arjuna picked him, even though he was not going to fight. But even though he said he wasn't going to fight, he still, because Bhishma, it's a very long story, but Bhishma, he is a great devotee of Krishna, but he's fighting against Krishna, and he's fighting against the Pandavas. And Duryodhana was telling Bhishma that he's not fighting very well because these are his favorite students of the Pandavas, and you're not really putting all your effort into it. So Bhishma said, tomorrow I shall kill Arjuna, or Krishna will break his promise and fight. So the fight was very bad, and Arjuna would have gotten killed by Bhishma, but Krishna picked up a broken chariot wheel and went after Bhishma with the broken chariot wheel, and Bhishma said, I have no quarrel with you. And Prabhupada says that Krishna would rather be known as the protector of his devotee than the great moralist who never breaks his solemn vow. And then he also tells Arjuna later in Bhagavad Gita that you declare it boldly, that my devotee will never perish. So part of that is because what the devotee says will come true. Bhishma said, I'll kill Arjuna, or Krishna will break his vow. So because Bhishma said it, he's a devotee, it had to happen. So Krishna broke his vow. Also, when when Krishna told Arjuna, you declare it boldly, because some people might say, if Krishna says it, my devotee will never perish. People may not believe that, because Krishna doesn't always tell the truth, but his devotee always tells the truth. So Krishna told his devotee to say it, so Arjuna says it, because a devotee always does what Krishna wants. So therefore we can understand that devotees are always protected by Krishna. So I don't know how I got on all that. See, the process of thinking of, Ram, because Krishna and Rama are quite different, but they're both all attractive. Their pastimes are very attractive. And whether one thinks of Ram or of Krishna, what he is like is described in this verse of Bhagavad Gita. The Lord is Kavi. That is, he knows past, present, and future, and therefore knows everything. He is the oldest personality because he is the origin of everything. Everything is born out of him. So even though he's the oldest, he doesn't look old. Generally, in Christianity, they have some conception that he's also the oldest, but they make him look old. Michelangelo, that's their idea of what he looks like, because they're just using their own imagination. They know he is very old, so they depict him the way they think he would look. But he doesn't look that. Because if you look at Krishna, you think he doesn't look old to me, but he is. And if you don't believe Krishna, you can believe his devotee. He is also the supreme controller of the universe. He's the supreme controller of all the universes and the spiritual world. He's the supreme controller of everything that exists. And he is the maintainer and instructor of humanity. So he's instructing humanity. He instructs humanity personally. He sends his representatives to instruct humanity. He wants to instruct us. So why does he instruct us? So that we can have a better life here in this material world? No, it's so that we can go back to him. There's a certain way of getting back to the spiritual world, and he instructs humanity in behaving properly so that they can go back to the spiritual world and end this repeated birth and death in this material world. He is smaller than the smallest. The living entity is 1/10,000th part of the tip of a hair, but the Lord is so inconceivably small that he enters into the heart of this particle. So if you take a tip of a hair and you cut it into 10,000 pieces, that's the size of the living entity, the soul. And the Lord is in the heart of that soul. He can enter into the atom and into the heart of the smallest and control him as the supersoul. So although so small, he is still all-pervading and is maintaining everything. So, he's not only small, this is one aspect of God, but he's also a person who can stand in front of us, and we have some relationship with him. So by him, all these planetary systems are sustained. So this whole thing is helping us to remember God, to think of him. And even in here, he says, always think of me, become my devotee. We have to try to always remember Krishna or always remember God, and these are ways. I remember talking to a cousin. This was before I came to Krishna consciousness, before I really knew. And I was thinking, God wants us, to think of him and surrender to him and give our life to him. And she was saying how, what do you think? God just wants you to just do that? Doesn't he want you to just have, be happy? So people have an understanding that God wants us to have a nice situation in this material world. And I remember thinking, I didn't think that's what he was trying to give us. I think he wanted us to give us something better than that. Just this temporary situation in this material world, having a nice family and nice economic development and a nice house and a nice car. Wow, God loves me so much. mean he loves you. It's like, what's the use of those things? And then they're gone. They're all finished. The family's finished, the car's finished, the house is finished. Everything is temporary. The body is temporary. So why would somebody who really cares about you give you something like this that's going to make you happy for a few seconds? Compared to eternity, what's the value of it? Anyway, he is still all-pervading and is maintaining everything. By him, all these planetary systems are sustained. We often wonder how these big planets are floating in the air. It is stated here that the Supreme Lord, by his inconceivable energy, is sustaining all these big planets and systems of galaxies. Of course, we have this, gravity. But what is it? The law of gravity. But this law is there. We're not denying it. But there's a lawgiver. There's someone who made this law. Where does it just come from? Just like, we're getting pulled in this way and that way. And everything, the whole universe is so organized. If we get closer to the sun, we burn. If we get far away, we freeze. The oceans come in, the tide comes in, goes out. I mean, everything, we rotate. Now we're getting into winter, and we're going to see how cold, as a matter of fact, and I think western Massachusetts already got about 5 inches of snow or something. So how do these things happen? And then what's going to happen? We know what's going to happen. It's going to get a lot more snow. And then eventually it'll get warmer and the seasons come and go. I mean, all this is happening in such an orderly fashion. How can there be order? Wherever there's order, there's always intelligence behind it. You cannot give any example of order without intelligence. There's order in this camera, there's order in this microphone, everything has some order. In the building itself, let's build a building. Let's start with the roof, there has to be done in an orderly manner. You start with the foundation. So everything is done orderly. Where anything is done orderly, there's intelligence. So unless you can think of an example where there's order and there's no intelligence. So in every example we can give of order, there's intelligence, and we can see there's intelligence behind it. We can see you driving down the street, there's a red light, it turns red, the other side turns green, they go. I mean, it's just so, the order may not be so smoothly because we're doing it, but there is order, and there is some intelligence behind it. But yet, when it comes to the universe, with all the exact order there is, some people say there is no intelligence, there is no God. It's just so foolish. They're not very logical. If you're following logic, you have to go from one thing to another to another. There's order here, there's intelligence. Order here, there's intelligence. Every single example. And then we come to the universe, there's order, but there's no intelligence. That's not very intelligent. So, there is a God, and he's floating these planets. He's creating this gravitational pull, and he's keeping it exactly in place. Everything in a perfect order. By his inconceivable energy, is sustaining all these big planets and systems of galaxies. The word achintya, inconceivable, is very significant in this connection. God's energy is beyond our conception, beyond our thinking jurisdiction, and is therefore called inconceivable, achintya. So even the things that are inconceivable, we can try. Just like we have our philosophy that we follow is achintya beta beta tattva, simultaneously one and different. We're simultaneously one with God, but we're different from him. Everything is simultaneously one with God, but different from him. So it's achintya, it's inconceivable. It's very, very difficult to conceive. But you can get some idea, even though it's inconceivable, that yes, this is all God, but yet he's a separate person also. So we can get some idea, although to actually see it, it's inconceivable. But that's achintya beta beta tattva. Inconceivable, simultaneously one with and different from everything. So this is also achintya. This trying to understand God's energies. They're inconceivable. So who can argue this point? He pervades this material world and yet is beyond it. He's all over this material world and yet he's beyond it. We cannot comprehend even this material world, which is insignificant compared to the spiritual world. So how can we comprehend what is beyond? I mean, what's transcendental? What's beyond matter? We don't even know matter. We know so much, we've learned a lot, but there's so many things we don't know. And then they find out something else we don't know, and then we see, oh, now we know it all, until they find out something else they don't know, and then they know that. There's so many things in this world. Like there was no living, you can't live underneath nothing alive can be underneath the water when it's so deep. And then they go down and they see there's living entities there. It's too much pressure for anything to live. It's just so stupid. It's like, because I can't live there, nobody can live there. You know, it's like there's no life on the other planet. Like on the moon, there's no life because I couldn't live there. There's different kinds of life. There's subtle forms of life. I mean, people, everything is relationship to me, what I can do. If I can't do it, nobody can do it. It's just foolish, very foolish. So they're learning more and more, but there's so much to learn. So how can they know what is beyond this world when they don't even know what's in this world? Achintya means that which is beyond this material world, that which our argument, logic, and philosophical speculation cannot touch, that which is inconceivable. Therefore, intelligent persons, avoiding useless argument and speculation, should accept what is stated in scriptures like the Vedas, Bhagavad Gita, and Srimad Bhagavatam, and follow the principles they set down. This will lead one to understanding. So now that's the end of the purport. I'm just going to explain this one part of the purport. Therefore, intelligent persons, avoiding useless arguments and speculation. It's just a waste of time speculating and arguing about something we know nothing about. They should accept what is stated in scriptures. So now, someone will say, why should I accept what's stated in scriptures? It's like, why is that right? Well, one thing is, if you study scriptures and everything that you can prove is correct, then you have to accept that even things I can't prove, I'll accept. So in that way, you're not blindly following. You're following because it makes perfect sense. Just like in the Bhagavatam, in the 5th canto, it explains the conception, at the time of conception, when the child is just conceived in the womb, what the child is like. It tells what it's like in 1 week, what it's like in a month. It gives exact descriptions. And they're the same things that the scientists now are seeing. Now, there was 5,000 years ago, they didn't have these, I don't know what they used to tell the sonograms or how they can tell what the child is like in the womb. But they didn't have these things. But they had the scriptures. And the scriptures said this, and they're 100% accurate. So when you read this, how could they know this? How can they know this? So they did know it. And everything that it says in the scriptures that you can prove is all correct. So therefore, like if somebody tells you everything they tell you, you find out is true. They never told you anything that was not true. And then they tell you something that you can't know. But a good person would say that, well, at least we would say, most likely that's also true. So we can accept the scriptures at least in that way. So therefore, we should accept the scriptures completely, but that may take some time. But at least in the beginning, use your brain, investigate what the scriptures say, and see if it makes sense or not. Even just who you are. Just like in Bhagavad Gita, you had a little baby's body, you had a little boy's body, a youth's body, a man's body, an old man's body. The body is different. The old man's body is totally different than the baby's body. That baby's body doesn't exist, but it's still the same person, It's not like every time the body changes, it's a different person. It's the same person. So what's constant? Every cell in the body changes. They die and new cells are made. But there's something that is the same. So Bhagavad Gita explains it's the soul. The soul is there in the body. Actually is there at the time of conception. And then that body grows and then is born and then eventually dies. And then the soul takes birth again according to his consciousness. And it's just logical. It makes sense. What can I be? And if the purpose of life was just to grow up, go to school, get an education, get a job, get married, have kids, have grandkids, get a house, and die, what's the use of that? So there has to be some more purpose to life. And this is the purpose of life, is to understand who you are, who God is, and your relationship with God. So, and you can find that out by accepting the scriptures. You accept anybody else, any mundane scientist, and then they're wrong. Then you find out they're wrong. One scientist proves another scientist wrong in what he figured out. There's carbon-13, I think it was called carbon-13, a way to find out the age of some fossils. And then they did this for years, and then they found out that it was not correct. It's like, what a waste. Then there's something else so they can tell how old things are. So we don't have to. This is not speculating. We don't need to speculate. We can find out the truth by hearing from one who knows the truth. A self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. So you have to approach a bona fide spiritual master. Now, I'm not one, so I'm not trying to propagate anything. But you have to approach such a person, and you have to follow that person, follow his instructions, and then you can also become a self-realized soul. And you have to read from books like Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and Ishopanishad, and so many wonderful books that have been translated into English by Srila Prabhupada. It's like all at our fingertips. We can just take advantage of it. And by taking advantage of it, by just reading this, you're getting purified. Just by hearing it, you get purified. It's such a simple process, hearing and chanting. You can perfect your life just by hearing about Krishna. You can perfect your life just by chanting about Krishna. And anyone can do it. And even if you don't perfect your life, you do it as much as you can, you get purified. And whatever percentage you become purified in your next life, you'll start at that percent. And hopefully you can become fully purified and go back home, back to Godhead. So I'll read the verse one more time, and then if anybody has any questions. One should meditate upon the Supreme Person as the one who knows everything, as he who is the oldest, who is the controller, who is smaller than the smallest, who is the maintainer of everything, who is beyond all material conception, who is inconceivable, and who is always a person. He is luminous like the sun, and he is transcendental, beyond this material nature. Any questions? Oh, Bhima, I'm surprised. That's actually a very good question, but it really is. I mean, I have different kind of questions from you. Actually, in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asks, what is his self-realized soul like? How does he walk? How does he eat? What does he do? So this, how can you tell what is self? First of all, his whole life is just about, you could say, God or Krishna. He has no other interest. He's not interested in sense gratification. Most of us here, we're interested in both. we want to enjoy sense gratification to a certain degree, but we also want to make some spiritual advancement. So we're here. Many people are only into sense gratification, but there's very few people who are just interested in spiritual life. So what do? They hear and chant about Krishna. It says when they get together, devotees, they hear and chant about Krishna. So it's what they're speaking about that's very important. That they're always talking about Krishna. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who is the founder of Acharya's grandfather or great-grandfather, grandfather, spiritual master. Bhaktivinoda was known that when he was a magistrate, he was like a Supreme Court justice, you can say. And he was a full, pure devotee, surrendered to Krishna. And it says that anyone who would meet him on the street, because he has this very high position in the material world, they would talk about something. And it says within a few minutes, the conversation would come to Krishna or God and the soul, the eternity of the soul. And the whole conversation would somehow, you start talking, hey, how are you doing? Well, it's really nice out today. Yes, it is. And somehow or other, he brings the conversation to, the sun is shining, the sun is the light of the sun is, whatever. I don't know what he said, but I know it says that it brings the conversation to Krishna. So it's how they behave, what they do. It's not just also, it's not all talk that I just talk now in front of a group, but also in private, lives the same way. And we learn from what Srila Prabhupada, he had devotees with him 24 hours a day, and he lived this 24 hours a day. He didn't like, oh, wow, now I can relax, let me turn on the TV. They didn't have videos then, so. But he didn't, he's never interested in the mundane world. His only interest is in the spiritual world, and his only interest is trying to help people. I mean, if you look at the example for Christians, or people in this country, mostly Christians, they could look at Jesus Christ. What did he do? Was he interested in, as a matter of fact, because I was very much into Jesus Christ, and I don't want to get into the whole thing, but through Jesus I actually came to Krishna. But when I first got into Jesus, I was in the Navy, and I went to a meeting, a Latter-day Saints meeting, because I wanted to know more about God, and about Jesus. I wanted to be like Jesus. I got really impressed with Jesus. Even though I was a Catholic, I wasn't religious. And then somehow in the Navy, I got some realizations. But in any case, so I go to this Latter-day Saints meeting, and they're talking very much about family and how, family is so great, whatever about family, I don't know. But I thought I wanted to be like Jesus, and I thought, why are you putting so much emphasis on Jesus, on family, when Jesus wasn't married? I was thinking, you give your life to God. That's the highest thing you can do, completely. Don't, of course, we can do both to some degree nowadays, because most of us can't renounce family. But so when I asked this question, then they told me that, well, we believe he was married. And then right after that, I gave up that religion. I mean, I searched. I checked out so many things, and so things that didn't make sense, I rejected. Where did they get it from? I read the Bible. I didn't find it in there. So they got it from somebody else, speculating, talking about don't speculate. So someone else comes along and speculates. Well, Jesus was probably married because I want to be married, and I want to be like Jesus. I don't know how they came to that conclusion. I'm just giving an example. I'm not saying that that's what happened. I don't know. But, so you have to see, person like Jesus his whole life was just to serve God. And a person like Srila Prabhupada, his whole life was just to serve God. So that's one of the ways you can find who is a self-realized soul, that they have no other interest outside of the interests of the Lord. They have no other interest. So, I don't know if I tried. Well, it's okay to get mad in provoking situations. You're transcendental. As a matter of fact, with Srila Prabhupada, there's so many things that sometimes you would think he's going to get upset, and he's like, for instance, he's upset about something, because he'd get upset, things ain't going the way this, that, and then some new neophyte devotee tells him, maybe you should chant Hare Krishna. And then he just takes his beads and starts chanting. It's like, that's another thing about a great personality. They can accept good instructions even from a fool. And a fool won't accept good instructions even from a great personality. So if somebody gets good instruction, it doesn't matter who they are, what they are. If it's a good instruction, you can accept it. So sometimes that happened one time. It was I just read recently, a few days ago, about. Is it time? Okay. Somebody's playing around there. Okay. I just read when. This was in the very beginning, in the 60s, 68, I think it was. This devotee, what was his name? Subal? I think it was Subal. He went to open a center with his wife in Santa Fe. And then, Santa Fe, New Mexico. And then he came back to Prabhupada, that his wife left him, went with some other woman. And Prabhupada was like, he can't understand these things. It's like these things don't happen like that in India. So in any case, he said, I should just go back to Vrindavan and chant Hare Krishna. It was like, but then he dealt with it, and he helped them. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.